Welcome, everyone. We are glad that you joined us for the Ask Me Anything about DRMP certification. I know that there are still some attendees coming in, but I just wanted to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Penny Woolery, and I'm the Manager of Certification and Membership for AAC International. I'll be one of your hosts today for our expert panelist today. I'm going to ask Valerie Smith, who'll be managing the questions, to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Valerie Smith. I'm the Senior Credentialing Analyst of the Certification Department. I'll be your point of contact, your first step in applying for the DRMP application. So if you have any questions during the process, I'm happy to help you out.
So I just wanted to let you know how we'll be conducting the meeting today. You will ask your questions through, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's an icon that has a Q&A in it. Just click that and ask your question there. Valerie or I will be monitoring those, and we'll be asking those questions in the order in which they're received. And that's how we're going to let you ask your questions to the panelists, who will answer the questions live. You can use chat, and sometimes we use chat to give you links to resources that might come up during the conversation. So you may want to check out that too. But your questions for the purposes of this session that is being recorded, for those who couldn't attend today, use the Q&A box and we'll get to those. I'm going to introduce now the chairman of the certification board, Charlie Bulliard. Charlie, it's all yours.
Thanks, Penny. I appreciate that. And we're very pleased to have you all join us this evening for our live webinar regarding AACE's Decision and Risk Management Professional Certification. Very pleased also to have members of the DRMP Committee of the Certification Board as the panelists who will be responding to your questions. So with us, we have the chair of the DRMP Committee, Brian Evans. We have also Miriam Jad and Chris Cadell. And thank you all for joining us as the panelists this evening. So I think with that, Penny, we're ready to move into questions.
I'm muted. Sorry. I'm putting in the chat.
You're muted again.
I'm so sorry. I wanted to make sure that that was turned on. Just wanted to welcome you again. Sorry for that technical glitch, but please give us your questions. We hope that you've been thinking a lot about this, and I'm sure that you have many burning questions about the DRMP certification. And the panelists that we've assembled here today are the best people to pick their brains and find everything that you can out about DRMP certification. So once again, use the Q&A box at the bottom. And while you might be a little shy in asking your questions, I'm going to start it off by asking a question. So what is going on with the DRMP relaunch of the certification? Brian, as the chair, how would you like to address that particular burning question that I know we get occasionally via email, to help our attendees understand what's happening?
We have been working for about a year on relaunching the DRMP. We've written a whole new exam. We've written several new memo questions, and we believe that we will be ready to launch about the time of the annual meeting. So we believe our work is close to complete.
That's great news. Thanks for the update. And you heard it here first, attendees. This hasn't been anything that has been shared publicly. So that's just a bonus for attending today's session. Val, I see that there is something in the Q&A box.
Yes. The question is, how is DRMP and PRMP related?
Do you want me to answer that one?
Sure.
Go ahead.
So the PRMP is a professional level exam, and that puts it on kind of the same level as the EVP PSP, CEP, those exams. The DRMP is an expertise level exam, which puts it on the same level as the CCFC.
I think the other distinction I might add would be that the PRMP focuses primarily on risk management at the project level, whereas the DRMP includes that, but in addition adds more decision analysis and corporate or program portfolio level risk management practices.
And also I can add about it is more expertise level, means that if you have more experience after the PRMP in the project, not just only that, from the strategic level as well, more communication skills, more look at the more psychological aspects of the project and organization, then that all comes to it from the PRMP to DRMP. Then that's how we can look at that. We can get these all experiences and then get to DRMP, and that's a differentiated. So it's more expertise in the aspects of the experience.
And now we have the answer to the question of how many DRMPs does it take to answer a question?
I think that should be the first question on the exam. And only those that attended this session will actually know the answer. So there you go. Second bonus for attending the session. I know that we don't have anything yet in the Q&A, and
I have a question though.
oh, okay, go ahead.
Oh, no.
So in your earlier response to the first question, you talked about the development of the new exam and new memo questions and things of that nature. And then how does that tie into the study guide and those materials that guide someone who's applying for the DRMP?
I can answer that a little bit, and then Chris is going to add to it for sure. What we are thinking is that because it's about like 10 years past, and the study guide that prepared 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago for the DRMP, we developed many RPs since then. And these RPs also it could be the part of the study guide. And that's the thing, when a study guide gets updated, so then it's going to be update the whole DRMP exam. But it's not going to be much difference. The only things, the new material is all will be part of the study guide and is more updated. And it was a time to look at that in 10 years. That was my answer. Chris, what do you think?
No, I absolutely agree. I think we're looking at making tweaks to the study guide in court. Well, we're looking at coordinating with the education associate board for them to make tweaks to the study guide based on the additional RPs that have been issued and slightly different format to the exam that we're proposing. So, but otherwise it will largely follow the same format as it currently exists.
Great, thank you very much.
So I do have a question before we get to one of the questions that I see in the Q&A. Do you expect there to be any changes to the eligibility requirements of the examination when you relaunch?
I don't. I think we'll maintain the same eligibility that we had in the past.
Good to know.
I agree. Should we go through the eligibility? Is there any question about it?
There's not yet, but I'm sure there will be. Do you want to do that first, or do we want to answer questions?
Let's go to the questions.
I
Let's
think
go
we
to the
can go to the
questions and come back
questions.
to the
Okay.
eligibility.
Yes. Do you provide training for the DRMP?
I don't think at this point we have any specific training for preparation for the DRMP certification exam. I know there are some risk management trainings out there. I'm not sure if any of our approved education providers offer risk management training or not, though, quite honestly.
I know that, I guess a decade ago when I took the original exam, I used the study guide. So that's how I personally studied for it. But like Chris said, I don't know of any training course out there.
I'm going to ask the next question. How is PRMP versus the RMP of Project Management Institute? How do they compare?
The PRMP is much better.
Hands
Any
down.
other questions?
I'm going to answer that one too. I agree with both Chris and Charlie. I have the DRMP and I have the PMI RMP. I actually studied for the DRMP. For the PMI RMP, I signed up for it, and a week later I took it without studying and I managed to pass. You can't do that with the AACE exams.
I think in the general perception is, and it may be a perception with a biased group, that the AACE certifications are more rigorous than the PMI certifications.
I think it's a very individual thing. And I agree with you, Chris. It's hard for us to give an objective comparison because we clearly are more involved in the development of our own exams and stand behind them as being, you know, gold standard superior to others because it's ours. But I think if you really are wanting individually to know what the differences are and what might be a better fit for you, unfortunately, I think you just have to look at the outline and the domains of our exam compared to PMI's exam, and also what are the rigors of the eligibility requirements and all the things that are important to you. It's a very individual thing. It's a fair question. I'm not saying that, you know, that isn't an appropriate question. I think it's fair, but in full transparency, I think it's just hard for us to really give an in-depth objective review between the differences of the exams, because we're always going to stand behind our exams first and foremost.
And there's a comment in here. Siger said that PRMP and DRMP covers quantitative risk analysis comprehensively, whereas the PMI RMP deals largely with qualitative risk management. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Siger.
So before I ask the next question, I want to post something. I posted a link for the DRMP eligibility requirements, exam details, and recommended study materials. The list that's on the website for the recommended study materials is what was previously recommended for the DRMP before it was revamped. So I know that we're not ready to post what the updated recommended study materials are. This person is asking, I'm an active AACE member. Where can I find the resources for DRMP preparation? I'm going to add to that question because I did already post that link. Is this a good starting point for somebody as they wait for the DRMP to be relaunched? Are these recommended practices and the certification study guide, is it a good place to start? What do you recommend for them to do?
I think that it's a
Sure.
good start. as Miriam said, there have been some additional RPs written in the decade since the DRMP was launched. We have incorporated some of those RPs into the revised or relaunched exam. And I would say kind of look at all of the risk-related RPs in addition to the ones that are on here, and you should be good.
And I think it's fair to say that with the pending revision of the study guide, this listing of recommended practices will be updated so that this listing and the study guide are coordinated.
And as a reminder, all the recommended practices are free for members.
Other things I can add for the people that wants to apply for the DRMP. In general, there is a S&K RP for the risk, the decision and risk management. If you look at these S&K, you can see all the skills and knowledge categories there. Based on we have it supporting skills and knowledge, all the details on that, risk management skills and knowledge. You have decision skills and knowledge, and also in other functional risk, which is all the other areas, for example, as a cost, estimating, planning, scheduling, all these items as a separate functions. Value engineering and historical data, lesson learned, those. If you look at that, all these areas that related to what we have it all in a study guide, and also the RPs can cover the basically the reference to the exam. So that's a good to start to see what you can find or what's expected to see there.
And I want to add that I think, Sagar in the chat raised a good point. And one thing to understand about the DRMP, as with the other expertise level certifications, they're really based on testing or examining your competencies that have been gained through, very concentrated experience in risk management, and at the expertise level, the decisions and so forth that go along with being, someone who is at a very senior level, responsible, in charge for not only, the risk management, but the decisions that go along with that. And so there is a lot to be gleaned from the RPs and the study guides. There's also some professional practice guides that are related to the DRMP that are also good study materials. But we're really looking to challenge with the examination your competencies, the things that come from a combination of your education, your training, and your wealth of experience, working day in and day out with risk management.
Someone just asked, why do the RPs show they're out of date? Why are the dates not updated?
So the RPs show the date of the last update until they are next updated, and then new RPs show as the year in which they're published. So they're not all developed or reviewed or updated at the same time. It's a process that the Technical Associate Board and the subcommittees of the Technical Associate Board go through with respect to reviewing and revising and either issuing new RPs or issuing updates to the existing RPs. So they will never have all the same current update year designation.
Carly, I just wanted to demonstrate for that. So I pulled up 10S90 here, which, you know, the year 90 was when it was first developed. But as you can see here, it was recently updated, August 23rd, 2022. So I just wanted to kind of demonstrate,
Right.
even the 72R12 was the year that it was initially developed, but it was updated on this date as well. And of course, some of those things might be changing as I know that they do a regular review. The technical board does a regular review, but they do that to see if there are anything new that needs to be changed in the document. And if there isn't, they don't change the date, but it has been reviewed because we're required to demonstrate that for our accreditation, that there has been a review of the body of knowledge. So there is a document that shows when they do their review, and they do it no later than, what do I want to say? They can't go beyond 5 years. So it has to be at least every 5 years that they have to review these documents. But if there are no significant changes, the date just doesn't change. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
And Sagar also mentioned when the study guide for the DRMP certification is published, we'll have incorporated all the relevant and latest RPs in it. Thank you, Sagar. Okay, so this makes me wish that I wasn't the one asking the questions in the queue, because I am going to butcher the names that are in this question. So I'm going to do my best. Please bear with me. It says first time risk was introduced in 1964 by Arthur Casagrande, geotechnical engineering under Carl Terzaki, second lecture. I'm sure that's right. Okay. My perception is that AACE PMI risks are purely project basis. AACE focuses on cost and schedule. However, AAC risk is not applicable to risk associated with oil and gas production, example components. So how is AACE more than project risk and cover engineering risks?
I'm not entirely sure I understand the question, but I'll try not to ask you to read it again. But as I understand it, so the question is how is AACE's practice of risk management or decision analysis and risk management related to oil and gas specifically, or just businesses in general?
I may try to answer it somehow.
Okay.
So what it is, like if they call it as engineering, which what we are doing, it is engineering too, but we have a different type of the risk. One is that may be related to the oil and gas, specifically talking about HAZID and HAZOP. Those things related to the mostly for the reviewing HAZOP, you're looking at the risk, but is a different risk management that is applied for the HSE, not necessarily same as that what we are doing it as a project risk or the company overall risk, which what is part of our job. That one is specifically for the engineering related to HAZOP, HAZID, and they use the different methods. Also, we are using those methods too, but not 100% when we collecting the risk events. For example, for the LUPA or ALRRP, all these things, methods that is used in that engineering. So there is a differentiated between the two, if that would be the maybe the reason that ask this question, but it's not related to PMI. PMI definitely not covering that at all, because it's just related to project management. So.
Well, and I would probably add that, I think maybe the distinction or variance is that AACE's practice of risk management is largely related to cost and schedule. In so much as, projects, capital programs, even business as a whole in terms of financial aspects. It doesn't focus on as much operability or also in oil and gas business line. You can look at the risk analysis as associated with the reserves for a development, either underwater or underground, calculation of the likely value of the reserves. Some will have high probability, some will be possible, some not. That's much more of a statistical analysis in that instance than necessarily a risk management aspect. So going back to my initial statement is our AACE's practice of risk management is focused on cost and schedule primarily.
Okay, there was an addition to that question that says engineering design. So is that something that is considered in the risk that AACE focuses on?
Well, I think to a certain extent, I mean, because when we do look at and conducting risk management or risk identification on projects, we look at design issues specifically. But like what Miriam was talking about with the HAZOP and those type of reviews, so a HAZOP review is one of the ways you manage the risk of there being an issue with the engineering design. But we look at how, when we're reviewing a project or doing a risk identification workshop, you'll focus on the engineering specifically and talk about what is the process being used, how the different teams are communicating or collaborating with each other, and depending on how well or not well they're doing it, there may be risks that are identified as a result of that, and that goes into your risk management or risk register and has to be managed in conjunction with everything else.
That's right. So basically input, I'm sorry, Charlie. Basically,
that's right, go ahead, I'll wait.
Input of the information to the risk register that you want to provide it for the project is one of the things that comes from the HAZOP review, what engineering review and all these things. So it's one of the income information to what we look at that as a cost and a schedule impact.
I was going to jump in and say, and I think it's also fair to recognize that AACE's approach to PRMP and DRMP crosses a lot of phases or stages of project development. And particularly, if you're in a very large project, might be in, an EPC type delivery, it doesn't make any difference whether it's power or oil and gas or chemical or, some other function. But the some of the risks that were mentioned in that question would be considered as you develop your contingencies that go along with your estimate when you're, trying to arrive to your agreed upon price, whether you're at your, your final decision stage gate, whether you're going to move forward with the project and capitalize it or not, or whether you're at the stage of ready to accept your, the tender or proposal from the contractor. And if you've evaluated, okay, what's the engineering risk? What's the construction risk? What's the financing risk? What all goes into determining what we're going to establish as our budget as we decide to move forward with the project? And is that a fair to Miriam and Chris and Brian? Is that a fair characterization?
Yes.
Yes.
This same person added one more thing. It's not a question, but it's a statement. If you look into the DNV.Norsk Veritas, there is a risk analysis standard for pipeline engineering, not hazard or HAZOP. I didn't know if anybody wanted to speak on that.
I'm not directly familiar with that.
Nor am I.
It's the same thing. I mean,
Okay.
you look at the PNIDs in for the HAZOP, look at that even is a process. For the pipeline, you look at mostly in alignment sheet, I believe. So they call it the same thing. There is a specific called PNIDs for pipeline, which is alignment sheet that they call it, but the concept is the same. We look at in a very, talking about the higher level of that. It's the same concept, just a
Okay.
different process and industry.
And just one more comment, and then I'm going to go on to the next question. There is a vacuum for an engineering design side that there is no formal qualification on risk for design engineering.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to move on. I'm a working project management professional. I am certified CCP. How long should I prepare approximately to allocate time for the DRMP preparation to be successful?
So I'm going to jump on that one right away and say that if you're working at the project level, then the suggested approach would be to first take the PRMP, P as in Paul, RMP, before you get to the point of deciding to take the decision and risk management professional. I think with what you've described as your day-to-day, operational functions and so forth, that moving next step would be the PRMP.
Can I just jump in really quickly too? Based on the requirements, Penny, can you scroll down on that screen or up, whichever way it goes? Based on the requirements for being able to sit for the exam, you have to have 4 years of experience directly related to the field of decision and risk management. So that's something to consider too. If your experience is not directly related to decision and risk, then it doesn't matter how many years you've been in the industry, you have to still earn those 4 years in order to qualify to sit for the exam. Now for the PRMP, you just need 8 years of industry related experience for which can be substituted with an industry related degree.
Yes.
So the PRMP might be the way to go. I don't have any questions in the queue.
So I would, to follow up, Val, on your most recent response there is a lot of information available on the AACE website through the certification hub about both PRMP and DRMP. And I know Penny has information about DRMP up on the screen at this time. But you can go to the website and also find the requirements for the PRMP. There's a lot of really good information and guidance there that would certainly guide your consideration for your next step.
And this person said they are already an RMP certified with 25 years of experience. So getting back to the question that they were asking, how much time should be dedicated to studying or what would you recommend?
I would just give a pat consultant answer and say it depends.
That's my answer too.
That's my answer too.
It is impossible for us to sit here and know what your particular experience is or anyone's particular experience is and how closely it aligns with the topics that are being covered in this exam. So it could range anywhere from just basically reviewing the material and confirming that you are knowledgeable about all of these topics, or feel very comfortable with them. Or, it could be months of preparation and really kind of brushing up on areas that maybe you haven't had that much direct experience with. So it depends.
So Penny, is it possible for you to scroll down so we can see the exam structure component of what? So here we see the exam structure. It's 5 hours maximum. There's 119 simple and multiple choice and compound questions, 1 memo assignment. But if you look to the right and look at the domains and see what domains the exam covers. And so I think to Chris's point, look through all the recommended practices and the study guide and figure out, one, where your strengths are, and then figure out, what competencies might be on the exam that may not rise to be your absolute best strengths, and concentrate your initial study efforts on those things that you think you need, some additional insight to. I don't know if that helps or not.
So I just wanted to point out that unlike some of our other web pages that actually list the domains, they're not listed here because it's currently being revamped.
Right.
So those won't be displayed here like the others. But I will say, based on our previous structure, just to give you an idea, those 4 domains included basic cost engineering and statistics, communication, which is your writing, and that's listed right here. It's your actual writing assignment, economic analysis, and decision risk management practices. Those would be the 4 domains that, similar, unless there's any major domain structure changes that you're going to institute in the relaunch. So the best guidance that we could give you at this point is what the current structure was. And maybe you all can add to that, knowing that that's what the 4 domains were at the last known exam that was able to deploy.
I just add and repeat this again. Take a look on an RP, S and K for the decision and risk management. So skills and knowledge, decision and risk management, there is a list of all the areas. And when somebody look at that, knows which one they know, which one is like lacking, and then that would be the best point to start to cover all the items. I mean, that's one of the quick benchmark to see where you are, basically, and how much additional information required. I can take a look on an RP number and then also put it in a chat.
Thanks, Miriam. I was actually going to ask you or ask the panel if there was one resource or 2 resources that would give somebody an idea of what they would need further study on, and you answered that already. So the next question is, would it be possible for AACE to provide sample exam questions, papers for candidates for getting confidence before sitting for the exam?
I will defer to Penny to answer that, because I think she did quite recently on the forum, or in the community, sorry.
Yes, we get asked this question a lot. So the answer to your question simply is no, we don't give sample questions or test forms for you to take. And there's a variety of reasons why. But as I shared with somebody or crafting a response to someone who's wanting a little bit more detail, our exams are built on real life scenarios, things that you should probably have encountered or currently experiencing if you've got at least the requisite eligibility requirement experience. So in this case, you know, we already talked about for DRMP, you've got to have beyond your training, you know, your college education, things like that, you need to have at least, I believe, about 4 years of directly on decision and risk management. So that's what you can expect to see on the exam. So it's not the primary reason why we don't offer sample questions or practice tests for you. Some of the other reasons why we don't do that, number one, certification is not a way for you to memorize or a textbook memorization of an answer of a scenario. You're not going to experience any of that on basically any of our exams. But also, there is an expectation that when you take practice exams, that somehow is going to be a representative of what you can see on the exam. And chances are, and more than likely, it's not going to be to the level and the rigor of what you're going to get on the exam. So it sets a bad precedent for someone to think that this practice exam is going to help me on this real exam, when actually it might just set you up to just like deflate your confidence and your skills and abilities, because the exams really are built on competencies, skills, and abilities that you should already possess. And it's just a way for the exam to check off the box and say, yes, this person has exhibited the fact that they do possess these skills, abilities, or competencies. So that might be a very, I could get into more specifics if need be, but it is just our practice not to do that. And finally, practice exams are considered an exam preparation. A lot of people are looking for that to prepare. And according to accreditation standards, the certification board has to stay out of that. We are not allowed to offer anything that would teach to the exam, which, let's face it, practice exams do exactly that. That's a marketing ploy, and it's also a way for some certification programs to ensure they have a great pass rate. That is not our goal. Our goal is to make sure that you can demonstrate that you have the skills and abilities to carry the designation of a DRMP and some of our other certifications. So we stay out of that arena. We leave that up to the education board through some of the training programs that they vet and they offer, but also in their study guides, there's often sample questions to give you an idea of what you can expect on an exam. To the extent of what the cert board will give you guidance on is how to write a memo. And that is just to give you a structure to follow. It doesn't give you any telltale signs. It doesn't give you a scenario. It doesn't really go into that detail. It basically is giving you an outline for success. And if you follow that outline and pay attention to the instructions in the exam, you should have an acceptable, successful memo. So I hope that answered the question satisfactorily as to why we do not offer practice exams or sample questions.
I did post a link to the article, how to write a DRMP memo, in the chat. And then Miriam also updated with the RP that is specifically for decision risk management professional. I don't have any other questions in the queue.
So can I ask the burning question that some of our other sessions have asked? So in no particular order, I would like for our attendees to be able to hear straight from our panelists. If they want to get to this position where you are as far as being DRMPs, how did this path happen to you? How did you get involved in the world of decision and risk management? No particular order, but we'd like to hear how that path opened up for you.
Ladies first.
Sure. So my background is I mean, I educated in mathematical statistics, and also I have a background in master degree in physics. So it's a combination of applied physics and math. I worked on a project for about 30 years. So it was about almost midway, about 15 years of experience in a project controls, being the project controls manager and all this. Then I am more involved in a risk management. And because of my mathematical and statistics background, so combination of all these, get to that, and started for the company doing the quantitative risk first, but it's got more and more and get to client side and develop from the EPC side, more go to the client, look at the whole spectrum of the risk management, and done a corporate. So look at the holistic way of the risk management. So that was, I got involved in a risk management. So what I can say, the best way to go to the doing the risk management experience is going to help a lot, because for any sessions that you run, any facilitating skills that you want to use, you have to have the background of industry, study on that to get the answer, ask the questions and get the everything's running. And it's not, definitely needs to have experience in that area. That's my story. Chris?
So I started out, I've got a civil engineering degree and worked in project management for the first 8 years, office engineer, project engineer, and then, which included some cost and schedule type controls, and then went to work for a consulting company where I focused on project controls. And we were working primarily for an oil and gas company, and they had made the determination that project controls people were some of the best people to do the quantitative risk analysis. So they trained us, even though I was working for a consulting company, trained us on how to do that, and then started going around reviewing projects for them. And then it expanded outside of that company to others, and expanded beyond just doing the quantitative analysis and doing more risk workshops and the full breadth of risk management practices. And I've just continued with that over the years, and was one of the people along with Miriam to help develop this certification initially back in when I was younger, didn't have gray hair, that sort of thing. And still practicing that to some degree today.
Okay. I was educated as a mechanical engineer and started working in a program office. And I got experience pretty much in all the roles within a program office. And then I changed jobs, and I started doing, consulting, planning and scheduling. I did some project controls. I did qualitative risk analysis. And then eventually I did a lot of project controls, a lot of planning and scheduling, a lot of earned value work. And then I had a boss who said, let's teach you quantitative risk analysis. And he put me on a job where I started doing quantitative risk analysis, and I did the workshops. I had someone else who actually did the mechanics of of running the tool, because I didn't know how to run the tool. And then I started learning how to run the tool, do the analysis, do the inputs, everything else like that. Did that for a while. And then kind of moved back to some earned value consulting, planning and scheduling. Every once in a while, I get asked to do some decision risk analysis, and I get to do that. I kind of feel like I'm the person who plays the entire infield.
trying to unmute myself. So I still don't have any questions. Charlie, did you have any other questions?
I do not at this point in time.
How about this one? Okay. How does somebody go from risk management into decision and risk management?
I think, risk management is more about what the risks are on a project based on decisions that have already been made. And the decision analysis is you're starting earlier in the process where the evaluation of risk and how that can influence decisions that are made is done. So how you make that transition, like I think most things that happen to most of us in our careers, you just kind of fall into it. But it is where you start getting involved earlier and earlier in the process. So just, you may work on the project during an execution phase, and then you start being part of a project development. And that's when you can start to, if you've seen what can happen based on decisions that are made, now you want to start working earlier on the project and being part of that development so that you can have the opportunity to influence those decisions, and incorporating risk evaluation into that decision-making process is going to be critical to a successful project at the end of the day.
I think that decision analysis also plays a role when you're doing portfolio level work, because you have a portfolio of projects, you have done risk assessments or risk analysis on the various projects, and then from those results you start doing decision analysis of maybe this one isn't going to work out the way we want it to. We need to institute another project or program to shore us up or to help fill out that portfolio.
Also, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No, go ahead.
Also, can it start early when we don't have a project? Can be done when we have a project, we want to set up the contracts, so it's go or not go. Can do any time when you are doing the procurement or contract for the project, you are in execution, and also challenging to see what subcontractor you want to pick and what it is, and then do the decision analysis that time too. So can be done in a different time, but most likely for the investment analysis or market analysis and all these things, we usually do it early when the project is not project either. You're in a portfolio, as exactly Brian said, you're in the very early stage. You have some program, or maybe going to this way or not. That's why doing some analysis that time. The most important is method, using the method and how to use that knowledge into the process of the work.
So
Thank
I
you.
have a follow-up on that. And that is, as you work through the life cycle of a project and the various stages or decision gates and things of that nature, but at some point you're going to transition from development into operation. And so how does the expertise level of decision and risk manager support that transition going from project development, construction, whatever, to the point where you're actually turning over and moving into operations, and you're going to be operating the project for its expected useful life?
Okay, I'm gonna just try it. I try it.
Thank you.
So let's put it this way: CapEx, OpEx. So we have the project, during the project, we have a capital cost. When we go to the operation, there is no project anymore. This doesn't make sense. So
Right.
it goes to the operation. Operation and maintenance is not a project. It's a production. So production risk, it's coming there, and mostly is a focus on HSE and related as a cost portion related to the production, and then all the revenue and all these things coming to the play. That's how I look at the operation risk and operation cost risk can be anything related to that in the operation. But as you said, it's not the project when it comes to operation, it goes to production. Brian?
I was going to say all my projects end at the end of, kind of CapEx, where, they put it in service, and, from my perspective, the project management was successful, and then we kind of move on to the next one, because in my experience, all our projects end once we're delivered. It becomes an O&M or an O&S or an operations issue at that point, and we move on to be successful other places.
There's a quick comment in here. When you talk about CapEx, I'm not used to these acronyms. OpEx, to determine the total EX equals CapEx plus OpEx plus risk X. It's not posed as a question.
So CapEx is capital expenditures, OpEx is operational expenditures. So it's operational plus capital plus risk plus, I can't remember what the last part of your equation was for the total expenditures. In the DoD world, they look at that as total life cycle cost. And once you deploy or declare, production complete, it all becomes operations and maintenance, or operations and sustainability.
Well, I have also, at least on some projects that I've been involved in that had a relatively large OpEx component. OpEx can be both operational costs, but it's basically costs that can be immediately written off, as opposed to capital expenditures, which go into creating an asset that then gets depreciated over time. So sometimes there's some gray areas as to whether something's OpEx or CapEx, but I've had a couple of instances where we were asked to split the risk X, the contingency, into a capital component and an operational expense component, so that they could manage it that way. I don't know that really works very well, because in most projects there are always trade-offs. You can spend more capital dollars and lower your overall long-term operating costs by installing more automation, higher quality equipment, whatever it may be, or you can build it as cheap as possible, and then your operational expenses typically higher. So I'm not sure if this equation is intended to kind of address some of those trade-offs and the risk associated with doing so. We prompted more questions. Dang it.
One more, it's a quick one. How do you see opportunities for DRMP certified professionals in the market? Is it in demand?
Absolutely. It's in rising demand.
Yeah. One of the projects I'm working on right now, we have volunteered to do a schedule risk analysis on a monthly basis. So we're continually doing Monte Carlo simulations to see what happens to particular dates that the customer is very, very, very focused on.
I don't think we're at the critical mass point where there are companies out there that are starting to require a DRMP in someone seeking a position with their company. But it does, on one's resume, when you explain it to someone, it does convey that level of experience and capability that you can offer to someone. So while they may not be asking for it, it is an opportunity for people that hold this certification to set themselves apart from others in the industry as being capable of doing much more than most.
Demonstrate your competencies.
Yes, thank you. That was much more succinct than what I said.
That is a great way to end this session. It is just 1 minute after 7, and we want to be respectful of our panelists' time and also our attendees' time. So I want to thank everybody for joining us here today. The dialogue was wonderful and very interesting. I hope that we've given you some things to think about. Stay tuned for more announcements of when the DRMP will be relaunched so that we'll open up registration. Stay tuned to the website as far as any changes in the resources that we've talked about here tonight, also the domains and all of that information. I will have your emails, so we'll give you a direct link whenever those things are announced so that you'll have an inside scoop before it gets out there to the public. So we look forward to seeing your applications come across our desk whenever the DRMP certification opens for registration. And we look forward to helping you on your DRMP journey. If you have any questions, please at any time reach out to us at certification@aacei.org, and we'll be happy to assist you. Otherwise, have a great evening, day, whatever time zone that you're in, and we'll connect with you sometime soon. Bye, everyone.